Lieve mensen, welkom bij een nieuwe aflevering van de podcast van verslaving naar vrijheid. Mijn naam is René van Kolm en vandaag heb ik een hele bijzondere gast. Ik heb een gast zelfs die niet in Nederland zit. Hij zit in Amerika, in New York. Het is Dan Karaty. Dan, thank you so much for coming to this podcast show. I'm very excited to have you on the show. It's 4 o'clock in Holland, but it's 10 o'clock in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, so ik ben natuurlijk snel naar Engels gegaan, want Dan is een Amerikaan. En Dan, by the way, how is your Dutch?
It's not great, Renee. It could use a lot of work, you know.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I read somewhere, I've Googled some information about you, of course, and I read somewhere that you had some Dutch lessons with the nonnen at Vught. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. I don't even know how long ago that was. Maybe 9 years, 8 years ago, something like that. I went to the nuns. I did like my first week there, and
Yeah.
then you leave, and then you're supposed to go back. I forget what it is, a couple weeks later or something
Yeah.
like that. And that happened to be, and I hate to even say it like this because it sounds like I'm making an excuse because
Yeah.
I don't have an excuse because I've had so many years
Yeah.
to learn. But I didn't go back to the nuns because that's when my son got sick when he was first born. He
Okay.
was 9 months old and he got sick, so I didn't go back for
Yeah.
that second week. But you know, I should have over the past 8 years at some point, and I never did, and that's one of my many regrets that I carry
Well,
around with me. You
yeah.
know,
Of all the things you regret, this is probably the less most important.
you know, yes and no. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of personal things and family things or whatever that I think about more. But the Dutch people have been so good to me. Have really embraced me on television
Yeah.
and have really supported me in all the years that I've been there through all the different shows I've done and
Yeah.
everything. And my unwillingness to take the time and the effort to be able to communicate in your language. There's no real good excuse for that.
Okay.
Um, it does go back to my overall problem.
Mm.
I was so afraid of anyone really seeing me,
Yeah.
right? And I felt like any kind of vulnerability I wasn't willing to give,
Okay.
right? And trying to speak a different language and sound funny and
Yeah.
get it wrong
Yeah.
and all of those things, that was just another one of those examples of I wasn't willing to take that chance.
Yeah.
I
I
wasn't
understand.
willing to open myself up.
Yeah.
And so I gave every excuse I could not to learn the language.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also, as I have understood that Dutch is a really hard language for like a foreigner to speak. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, so we're gonna do
But
this.
that's you giving me another excuse.
We've met, of course, in ja, wat was het? Last month in Den Bosch, in de Dag van Herstel, hè, de Day of Recovery celebration in the Netherlands, organized by Live magazine. And we had a sort of a college tour conversation on stage. That was very nice. We had a little chat off stage, and then I asked you for the podcast, of course. And so here you are now. But first, I know you don't need like any introduction because you're like a well-known person in the Netherlands. Even my son, who really doesn't watch any television, knows who you are. And but still, I've looked up some information, and you were in like 8 years or 9 years on Dutch television.
Yeah. Maybe even longer than that now.
More,
Yeah, we
yeah,
started with So You Think You Can Dance over
mm,
there in like
yeah,
2009 or 2010, something like that.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's longer from 2008 till 2019. So my math is not correct, but yeah, it's quite a long time. It's almost 10.
yeah.
Yeah. So you think you can dance? Holland's Got Talent, the ultimate dance battle, dance date, dance, 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 and then Belgium's. So they also discovered you in Belgium, and Dancing with the Stars. And you are in, as you talked about this, in Soph, the movie. So the first one, the second one, and now there's a third one coming?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's out now. It's in
Oh,
theaters
so
now.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's nice. So you
Yeah,
are
we were excited about that because that we finished shooting that in 2019, and like everything else with the pandemic, it just
yeah,
got put on hold. So finally being able to share that with everybody, and we've gotten so many great reactions
yeah.
from it. It's been really cool.
Now the people in Holland, I think they have a, I don't know how to translate this in English, but they have a warm heart for you. Ze dragen je een warm hart toe. They care for you a lot. And and when I met you in Den Bosch, you were really open about your story, and we had a little chat. And now I work as a family counselor. This podcast, especially for families, which their loved one suffers from addiction. And I know something about your story, but I would really love to hear also, yeah, your story. If you take it back a little bit, when did it's alcohol? It's not so much drugs, or is it also
Yeah,
drugs? It's
no, just
alcohol.
alcohol. Yeah.
Alcohol. When did it came into your life, and when did it become a problem?
Um, so alcohol, I mean, it came into my life when I was a teenager. In high school, I started drinking when I was like 14 or 15 years old.
Yeah.
And I mean, I didn't look at it as a problem, but it was a problem right from the first time. The
Yeah.
first
Why?
time I had a party,
Yeah.
I drank two blackout. Um, and that became the norm for me. So no matter what, I was always drinking either to blackout or until there was nothing else left.
Okay, so
Um,
you immediately there was no limit, and you were like
100 miles per hour all the way,
full
no
speed.
off switch.
Yeah,
It's like I couldn't shut it off,
yeah.
and I never saw the reason of why I should turn it off. Right? It's like
Mhm.
this is what we do. This is how we have fun.
Yeah,
That's what I thought.
yeah. And did it because when I remember when I took my first drug or drink, then it did that thing for me. You know, when you feel I felt complete, and I felt like this is the way I want to feel always. Now everything's working in the right way. How did that happen for you?
Yeah, it was just like it was a complete release.
Yeah, that's what.
And it
Yeah.
just it felt good, and I felt invincible, and it just felt good, and I never had any like repercussions from it, right? There was no consequences
Yeah,
from it. I was lucky enough, even though I put myself in plenty of bad situations from the beginning of
yeah,
either drinking and driving, or being in the car with other people, or being out in places I shouldn't be in, or things like that. And, I never got in any trouble.
hmm,
And I'm not saying that would have stopped me
yeah,
because I don't, that's too easy to say, oh, if I got in trouble, I would have stopped. But
yeah,
I never got in any kind of trouble or anything. And my parents, I was the youngest of five kids.
yeah.
So my parents had already been through it with my brothers and my sisters. So with me, they were just like, as long as you don't get in trouble, kind of thing, and you do all the things you're supposed to do
Yeah.
with school, with dance, with soccer, all that, as long as you do all that properly, then you can kind of do whatever you want. And
Yeah.
so I did,
And yeah, I understand, but having a blackout is, that's something where your parents not worried about you, or
So they didn't know that, right? Like
okay.
I didn't tell them that. That was like me and my buddies would be like, "Oh my god, dude, I don't even remember how I got home last night,"
Yeah.
and
Okay.
we would laugh and we thought it was a cool thing,
Yeah.
you know. We didn't look at it. It was a bad thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is
So
strange now when I look back. I'm like, God, I don't even know how my night ended or
yeah.
what I did or what I said to people, but I thought that was cool.
No,
It's like that means I had more fun than anybody else.
yeah.
That's how I looked at it, and that type of behavior, that type of drinking, continued through high school, through college, and it never really stopped. I mean, I never discovered that off switch.
Yeah.
There were periods in my life where I was so busy with work and everything that I couldn't drink every night. But if I was drinking, I would drink till I passed out.
Yeah. So there was no stop. And you say you were busy, hey, your life evolved and having a career, and you're a dancer. But in my mind, if you're a dancer, that's a highly physical thing to do. You need a physical condition. But I can imagine if you have a hangover or if you're too much to drink, is the how did that work?
Yeah, I think one of the whether you look at it as a gift or a curse, I don't
Yeah.
know. But I never really suffered from hangovers. Um, it just I don't know. It's like I could drink all night long, but I would wake up in the morning and be like, okay, I'm fine.
Okay.
You know,
So yeah.
so that never really slowed me down. And when I did have that like crazy kind of night,
Yeah.
I always had that ability to drag myself out of bed and go to the gym and get my day started, sweat it out of me and
Yeah.
get to work.
Yeah.
So and I did that right up until basically right up until the pandemic, right? It's like even when I was in my late 30s and early 40s and
Yeah.
I would drink way too much wine the night before, I still would get out of bed and be at the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning and be working out. And it was like, it was a way of fooling myself also.
Yeah.
And I would say to myself, well, I can't be an alcoholic. What alcoholic is in the gym at 6 a.m.? It's like, it was just another way that I would convince myself that I was okay.
Yeah. So you still had a lot of discipline, which is something I really didn't have. But I can imagine that you're thinking, if I get up and I go to the gym, but also it's amazing, like you say, brain-wise, that you have so much tolerance or such a special brain that you can have a hangover and go to the gym next day and do your stuff and do your work.
Yeah, I kind of like, as you talk, like when I was actively dancing and everything,
Yeah.
when I was in my 20s, I almost looked at it as like a superpower,
Yeah.
right? It's like I thought, I could go out with that
Yeah.
group of people, the people who
Yeah.
like to party, and I could party until 2 o'clock in the morning with them and have so much fun or whatever. But
Yeah.
then I was also with the gym rats at 6:30 in the morning at the gym working out, and I was ripped and I was in good shape or whatever. And so I thought, listen, I'm living life. This is how you live.
Yeah.
I'm getting to be with all these different groups of people,
Yeah.
and nothing can stop me,
Yeah.
and
Well,
so I didn't see anything wrong with it.
yeah.
I almost thought I was special.
Yeah. Well, I can definitely relate to that because when I had my drugs, it felt like I had this magic potion, like you say, sort of superpower, and I can handle it, which is of course wasn't true at all. But when did you meet your wife? That was much
Uh, we
later,
met
or
in we met in 2006.
okay,
Uh, yeah, so I was in the middle of like my second. I guess that was like my second year of So You Think You Can Dance,
yeah,
and we met, and I mean, she knocked me off my feet.
yeah,
I was in love. Love at first sight.
yeah,
But she, from 3 months in, she was already starting to say to me,
hmm,
"Hey, you drank a little too much last night. You were,
yeah,
And I would, the manipulation started right away from
yeah,
me. I would explain to her, "Oh yeah, but," and look at this and look at that and look how great I'm doing and
yeah,
all this different stuff.
yeah.
And I would throw at her 20 different reasons why it was okay. And it made sense. So she would just kind of shrug her shoulders and say, "Okay,"
Yeah. Yeah, because you were
let it
still
go.
yeah, you were still functioning, you're doing your thing. Yeah. And I also read, for whatever it's worth, on the internet, but you have a Dutch friend, Chantal Jansen. You probably know her. And I've read a little bit about you, of course, and your situation. And she said, I never noticed anything about Dan, his drinking problem. So people, you could have a terrific way of hiding it or
Yeah, I mean, I did. As I said, that superpower, right?
yeah,
It's like I would even when I met Chantal years later and we were
yeah.
working together, I would, no matter what I did the night before, I would wake up and go to the gym,
Hmm.
work out hard, sweat it all out of me,
Yeah.
and do everything I needed to do so that when I would show up to work that next day, I was smiling. I was
Yeah.
saying how great everything was and how excited I was to be there.
Yeah.
Um, in the back of my head, I was counting the hours or the minutes or whatever it was till I could get out of there
Yeah.
because my anxiety level from the drinking was through the roof. You know, it's like
Yeah.
I suffered from typical anxiety, I would say. Nothing so bad that I couldn't deal with. But when I drank heavy, my anxiety naturally would go through the roof. And
Yeah.
so I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to be around anyone, but I was very good at putting on the face and acting like everything was great, you
Yeah.
know?
And
Um,
what was your anxiety? You say because with many people, it's like they have anxiety and they take drugs or alcohol, and then the anxiety drops. But when you say my anxiety increased while drinking.
so it increased the next day, right?
Okay.
So I had typical anxiety. I don't think it was any different than most people, you know,
Yeah.
just like social anxiety and things like
Mhm.
that. But I never learned how to deal with it,
Yeah.
right? Or how to control it or anything. And so my answer was have a couple drinks because it would kill the anxiety and then
That's
I
what I
felt
mean.
good,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And the problem was as we spoke about earlier is I had no off switch.
Yeah.
So normal people if you go to the bar or something like that, you have a couple drinks, you
Yeah.
relax and now you have fun. Well, I can't stop drinking.
Yeah.
Right. So I would have those couple drinks and I would relax, but then I would keep drinking and drinking and drinking
Yeah.
all night long. And then when you wake up in the morning, you know, yeah, anxiety is a short term, alcohol is a short term fix for
Yeah.
anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Because when you wake up in the morning, it's
Yeah.
even worse,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and
Okay.
so now it's
Yeah.
even higher.
Yeah.
So my anxiety would be even higher, but I was also dealing with can people tell how much I drank the night before?
Yeah.
Am I
Yeah.
hiding it okay? You know, with the Chantals of the world, I
Yeah.
would always sit there. She and I always had so much fun together, and she
Yeah.
was always so good to me, such a good friend. But the whole time we would be laughing and joking, whatever, I would be thinking, I wonder if she can tell. I wonder if
Yeah.
she could, and that made the anxiety even worse. So all I wanted to do was get out of there so I could have another drink
Yeah.
and kill the anxiety, right? And I went in that vicious
Wow,
cycle.
man. But that's like a hard job because you have to maintain your your character, your role as Dan Karaty is on television, and it's like a double life. And in the back of your head, you're like this person with anxiety, and you just want to get out of there and do your thing. Yeah,
Yeah, I was exhausted
I can
and
imagine.
I
Yeah,
was miserable,
yeah,
right? Because as you just said, it's that double life. It's like I lived up here,
yeah,
like everything was great, and I smile all the time and tell everything, you know, but in the back of my head was misery, loneliness, depression,
mm, yeah,
just just unhappiness, you
yeah.
know?
The,
And the loneliness because
mm,
I didn't tell anybody about what was going on back here.
yeah, of
That
course.
was the worst thing.
Yeah,
You know, it's like I had all these great people around me
yeah,
who were willing to support me no
mm,
matter what was going on in my life. And yet I didn't feel okay sharing any of this with them.
yeah. And your family, where you were growing up, was there a tendency to open up and speak about feelings? Was everything out in the open, or was no?
No, so you know, my family, as I mentioned before,
Yeah,
I'm the youngest of five kids.
yeah,
I have two brothers, two sisters, all older than me. I have two wonderful parents, still married, still very happy together. I grew up in a great house, surrounded by great people, and we
yeah.
are all still incredibly close today.
Okay,
Um,
great.
we didn't talk about feelings though, right?
Okay, yeah,
It's we were my parents were both Broadway performers, and it was like you know the old saying show must go
yeah,
on. It was like we
yeah,
smiled and we went about our day, and we didn't have anything to complain about, right? Like
yeah,
we lived better than most people in this world. When there were unfortunate situations in our lives like deaths in the family, deaths of an aunt of mine
mm,
who died of alcoholism.
okay,
None of us knew it. We didn't know that's why she died. We knew she got sick,
yeah,
but no one ever told us exactly what was wrong.
yeah,
And after she passed away, it was never discussed.
yeah,
Um,
Okay.
when my grandparents passed away, it was kind of like if we went to the funeral, because we didn't go to all the funerals, but if we went to the funeral, we went and we went home,
Yeah.
and that was it. And life went
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And then just little things,
Mm.
bad days. My dad had a bad day at work, or
Yeah.
I had a bad soccer game, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
There was no discussion. There was just a
Yeah.
moving on to the next day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so when I started having, and I don't know exactly when it started, but when I started having doubts or fears or insecurities or
Yeah.
different things that crept up on me over the years, I my only thought was, well, that's weakness. I don't show weakness.
Mm.
I smile and I push through to the next day.
Yeah, and just also, which is makes sense if you never learn to talk about these feelings or difficult situation, whatever. So you really don't know what to do with them. Eh? So if that's your way of growing up at home and that's the standard mode, then of course you continue with this, which makes sense.
Yeah.
So and any close friends, your wife at one point said maybe you drink a little bit too much, but I guess you had some close friends where they're not going like, "Hey, Dan, last night and the week before, and what's happening?"
Well, who
Yeah.
do you think I surrounded myself with? It's
Yeah.
I was
Also got.
surrounded
Yeah.
by people who were like me,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so, at that time, my best friends were partiers.
Yeah.
Um, they were my boys. And my brother, who's 8 years sober,
Okay.
um, he was one of my best friends as well. All that was ever talked about is, look how great Dan's doing. He's working with this artist or that artist. He's choreographing this video or on tour
Yeah.
with this person. Oh, now he's on So You Think You Can Dance. Now, it's like,
Yeah. No one was looking at the full picture, but so weren't
e-
you, of course. Yeah.
except my wife, right? Who
Yeah.
was, she was my girlfriend at the time,
Yeah.
but she was the only one that would see me, go all night like that
Yeah.
and then wake up in the morning. Who knows? But I must have looked like shit, right?
I guess so.
And,
Yeah.
and she saw that, like, however I found my way through the day, but then I was right back
Yeah.
to that drink the next
Yeah.
night. She saw that behavior
Yeah.
and she knew that wasn't good or
Yeah.
normal.
So at one point, she says like you mentioned before, like okay, then you had a little bit too much to drink last night, and then of course you have a lot of excuses and stories like I know myself, all kinds of stuff that you can throw at them. And
Yeah,
but was there like at one point, like okay, now we really have to talk, like she was, you know, uh, confronting you with your
yeah.
drinking? Yeah.
There were multiple times where she really
Okay.
confronted.
Yeah.
So there were multiple times where I cut back on how much I drink.
Yeah.
I would do whatever I would have to do.
Yeah.
Um, because I was in love with her and
Mm.
I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her.
Yeah.
So, but I was also saying to myself, I know I don't have a problem, but let's just keep her happy,
Yeah.
right? So it
Do
was
it for
whatever
her.
I
Yeah.
had to do to, this will sound bad, but it was the fact, like, how do I get her off my back
Yeah.
about this? So I did whatever I had to do.
I can
And
relate to that. Yeah. Yeah.
the worst time was, after we had been together for a couple of years. Um, I had a couple of really bad episodes. Um, and she was just like, this is unacceptable. Like,
Yeah.
I can't be with you if this is how you're going to behave, whatever. So I quit drinking.
Yeah.
Um, and I started running, and I ran the New York City Marathon. Right. And it was basically, all right, I'll put this addiction aside
Yeah.
and I'll pick up this addiction. But I was, the term dry drunk.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
Um, I
Yeah.
was unhappy. I was bitter,
Yeah.
and I was just going to prove to her that I could quit.
Yeah.
And so I did that and I ran the marathon. I did all that. And it was all basically an I told you so, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I started drinking, a handful of weeks after the marathon.
Yeah.
And within, like, I don't remember, 2, 3, 4 weeks, I was drinking just as much as I was before I quit,
Yeah. Yeah, but
and
you know,
right.
this is typical, like also for people, their mind. If you think you can stop for 1 week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, and then run a marathon, where's the problem? The problem is gone. It's solved. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yes,
But of course, that wasn't the case. Yeah. And did she
but
buy
I
it?
was convinced. I was convinced too,
Yeah.
right? It's
And
like I convinced her, and I convinced myself.
yeah,
I'm
but
not.
was
Well,
she convinced?
I mean, she must have been because I asked her to marry me shortly after that. And she said yes,
Oh,
and
yeah. Yeah.
so as I said, I manipulated every situation and
Yeah.
made it good enough, right?
Yeah. So this carried on for now for some time, I guess, and then probably stopping and then picking up again, and like you said, and their children. You got a son and a daughter, and so now this continued for years, I guess, with also not seeking any help.
No, I just to go back to
Yeah,
really quick. So I was working, I was making money, so
yeah,
we were living the life kind of thing. But I'll cut back when we get married.
yeah,
And then we got married and I didn't cut back. I'll cut back when you get pregnant. I'll cut back when we have kids. I'll cut back once the kids are old enough because
yeah,
I'm not going to drink like that in front of the kids, right?
yeah, yeah,
So I just kept telling her it's
yeah,
going to change, it's going to change, it's going to change,
yeah,
but it never changed. In
yeah,
fact, it just got worse.
yeah.
You know,
And she bought it from time to time. She wanted to believe you, and of course, this is the problem. If your loved one has an addiction, that it's so hard to set those borders or boundaries, eh?
yeah,
And you see that people carry on with somebody who's an addict in whatever drink or behavior or whatever, and it carries on for years and years and years. Yeah. So what happened that because you've gone public now with your story, and so what was the moment that really changed something in your life?
yeah. So you asked if I had ever sought help or
Yeah.
anything like that. I didn't. Natasha had asked me multiple times,
Yeah.
go to AA. She bought me the AA book, you know,
Yeah.
go get counseling, go do this, go do that. And
Yeah.
I don't need that, you know. Um, and I kept that whole facade up for a long time and was successful with it. But when the pandemic hit,
Yeah.
um, and all these situations I put in place for myself to keep me in check enough,
Yeah.
travel, the work, all of that. Once all of that was taken away from me and I was home
Mhm.
during the pandemic and I wasn't able to hide
Yeah.
anymore. And now I was just, a dad and a husband,
No
not
escape.
working, not
Yeah.
doing anything. Yeah, there was no escape
Yeah.
anymore. Instead of facing everything, and I think everybody, right, during the pandemic, everyone was dealing with uncertainty,
Hmm. Definitely. Yeah.
insecurities, fear. There was everybody was dealing with it. I couldn't deal with any of it. Just like everything else in my life, I never dealt with it. My only way of dealing with it was to drink, and so I just started drinking
Yeah.
more and more
But then at
every day
home. Yeah.
at home
Yeah. Yeah.
until I got to the point where it was no longer just at night.
Mhm.
It was earlier and earlier in the day, and eventually I was drinking in the morning, and
Okay.
then and just finding my way to pace myself through
Yeah.
the whole day. But I drank all day, every day.
And how did your wife react to this when you start drinking in the morning?
You know, he wasn't happy about it. Was questioning me. Was saying this can't continue.
Yeah.
And I was admitting at that point to myself more so than anything, but to myself,
Mhm.
you're an alcoholic. Okay. But I was different, right? I was saying to myself, but
Yeah.
you can handle this,
Yeah.
And I, again, for a short while, I was convinced that I could handle it and I could figure this out, you know. and
You
I
could
couldn't, and it
you could
just
do
got
it on
uglier
it's
and
like
uglier.
you want to do it on your you wanna do it by yourself. You wanna fix
Yeah,
it by
I'm gonna
yourself.
do this on my
Yeah,
terms,
exactly.
you
Yeah.
know, but
Yeah.
I'll deal with it. And I couldn't, and I wasn't looking at myself in the mirror.
Mm.
Um, I think one, I couldn't look myself in the eye, but two, I didn't want to see what was happening to me because I looked awful.
Yeah.
Um, and my wife ended up, I mean, half the time she was sleeping in the guest room at that point because she didn't even want to see me,
Yeah.
smell me, deal with me,
This is what
you know.
happens. Yeah.
And my daughter walked into the bedroom one morning after what unfortunately had become a typical night for me.
Mm.
And now I keep in mind, I was always the one who was the first one up in the morning,
Yeah.
working out, back, getting the house set up, getting the kids ready for whatever they were doing that day. And now I was the last one getting out of bed, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and Quinn walked in to the room one morning. She was 9 at the time, and just and Quinny and I had this great, super active, let's do this, let's do that kind of
Yeah.
bond all the time. And now she walked in and just kind of tilted her head and looked at me and said, "Daddy, you don't look so good," you know, and started asking me what was wrong. And you could see this genuine concern
Yeah.
on her face. 9 years old, you
Yeah.
know, and concerned for what was happening to me. Um, and that just, I mean, it
Yeah.
broke my heart, you know. And I realized all those lies about I'll stop when we get married, I'll stop when you're
Yeah.
pregnant, I'll stop when we get kids. Now I was doing it to them, you know. And so I walked into the guest room where my wife was, and
Yeah.
I said, I keep trying, you know, but I can't stop. Um, I need help, you know. And within like 40 hours or something like that, I was in rehab.
Okay. Wow,
Yeah.
man, that really touches me. I can feel it like when your daughter, because they're so like upfront and no show and really looking into your eyes, but really looking into your heart.
It's like as a parent, all you want to do is
Yeah, of
right by
course.
your kids,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and I was willing to convince myself for years why, oh, but I'm still doing right. I'm still doing right. It
Yeah.
ain't right, you
No,
know.
and there were no more excuses, no more stories.
I was out, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, well, this is what has to happen, eh? That you really, all the things that we put up and still can handle it. Or when I met my wife, I say, yeah, the worst part is behind me, and it's not so bad anymore, and all these stories until you break down. Yeah. So you were in the US, in rehab. So was
Yeah.
that like a 12-step thing, or
It was a 12-step, yeah, it's
yeah,
a 12-step program, which works for me.
yeah,
Uh, and I can't say I didn't go there choosing 12 steps. Like
no,
I had no clue what I was stepping into. I just know I need help,
yeah,
you know.
exactly, yeah,
So it's in the US because of insurance reasons
yeah,
and all that kind of stuff. You get 31 days
yeah.
is what they give you.
So
So I
and
went for 31 days.
yeah, and when you was it also a relief when you were in the clinic, like, okay, now finally I can admit that I have a problem, or wasn't it like that?
It wasn't like that for the first like 2 days or
Yeah,
so. The first 2 days was guilt, shame,
yeah,
humiliation.
yeah,
I don't belong here.
yeah,
Anything and everything except accepting what the situation was.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But by the third day or so, um, all the guilt and everything started to lift because I started to realize this is where I need to be. This is what I need to do
yeah,
for my kids and for my wife, not just for myself, but if I'm going to be the dad I always said I'm going to be, if I'm going to be a good husband, this is where I need to be. And I started
yeah.
to realize it. And from talking to the other guys in there and listening to them,
Mhm.
um, all of a sudden I started to have some hope and realizing, after all those years of being all alone,
Yeah,
thinking I was all alone
yeah,
and I was the only one dealing with this, all of a sudden I realized, look at all these guys, they're just like me. and they think just like me, and they're
Yeah,
dealing with the same thing,
yeah,
and they're all, these guys who had been in there for a few weeks at this time, they're all laughing and smiling
yeah,
and joking with each other, and
yeah.
it was like you saw this light
Mm,
of, oh,
exactly. Yeah,
this doesn't need to be a bad place. This can be a good place.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and as soon as I started to recognize that, I felt that weight lift off me of, I wasn't thinking about, oh my God, I need a drink, or how do I get to my next drink? Or for the first time in years, it wasn't about drinking. It was about talking and communicating and learning. And it was like, oh my God, all of a sudden I was in the best place that I had been
yeah. So that
forever.
that turned around quite quickly. And how did your wife respond to that? You're finally accepting help and going to the rehab. How was her response?
I think my wife was happy to have me out of the house, um,
Yeah,
and have that. It was like I was her third child
yeah,
for a really long time. Every time I left the house, she was wondering which version of me was going to walk back in that
yeah,
door.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and her days were spent worrying about, which road was I going to go down that day.
Yeah,
Um, so I think, at first it was just happy that I was out.
yeah. So
Um,
because did she sort of lose her belief in you or in your relationship and in you as a person?
yeah, I think she was tired of the bullshit,
Yeah,
right? I think
of
she was
course.
tired of she was tired of me lying about everything,
Mm,
tired of me manipulating, um, and tired of me making promises that
yeah.
she knew I wasn't going to keep,
Mm,
you know. Um, and she always said to me from early on, from that first time of
yeah,
questioning me about my drinking, she always said, the one thing that will break us up is the way you drink.
yeah,
Um, and then years later, she said, "Hey, I've dealt with this forever, and it's fine. I was willing to, but I will not have this around my kids."
mm, yeah,
It's like, so, to your point of, was she happy and I was in rehab? Yeah, I think she was happy, but I think she was happier that I was just gone.
yeah. She was relieved that you're out
Yeah.
of the house. Yeah, yeah,
And then,
mm,
when the times that I was able to call her, which wasn't that often, but
yeah,
was able to call her at first, she was very short and tough
yeah,
on the phone. And of course, I didn't
yeah,
like that. I thought it was
yeah,
unfair. And I was like, how dare her treat me
yeah,
that way?
yeah,
So, um, but I think it was because, she knew me one way for 16 years.
yeah. Of course. Yeah,
I don't think she thought my whole world was going to turn around in 2 weeks. So I think she was happy for what I was doing, but I don't think she believed it.
no,
Um, and when I had my calls with her, with the
mm,
counselor on the phone as well, talking to the two of us, I knew how to say the right things for so long that even though now with the counselor, I was saying the right things and it sounded right,
yeah,
she still didn't believe it,
yeah,
you know? And in retrospect, I don't blame her. I wouldn't have believed it either. At the time, I found it incredibly frustrating.
yeah,
Um, but it took me a long time with the counselor there at rehab to understand that, hey, I've put her through this for this many years. I can't undo it
yeah,
in a month or 6 months or even a year. It's going to take years of healing
yeah,
to make her believe that I really am somebody different than she has come
yeah.
to know.
Yeah, yeah, and that's completely also the way it should be, and it's also I think what we need. I'm speaking for myself, of course, but also my wife when I and my mother when I went to rehab, I was like in 8 weeks. So the problem is fixed, and I'm coming home, and everything's hunky dory, as you say, everything's okay. And she said, "No, no, you're going still to a safe house, and you have to find your way in Amsterdam." I was like, what the what the heck? I'm doing my best, and why don't you believe me? And blah blah blah. And still, not taking full responsibility. And also for her, she also needs to recover. She needs to heal, and the trust is was gone. Was completely gone. So that takes time. So and how is it now? How is it with her and you and your kids?
So, I mean, it's night and day, right?
Yeah,
I'll stick with my wife first since we were already talking about her.
yeah,
When I came home, there was a lot of anxiety from her end, a lot of just, she was
of
unsure.
course. Yeah, of course.
And it was
Yeah,
almost like waiting for the relapse, kind of,
yeah,
you know.
yeah,
And so it was a day by day process and me just trying to do the right thing.
yeah,
And her just watching my behavior. And she's become more and more believing of
yeah.
me with every day that passes. Does she still look at me a little funny sometimes? Yeah, she does.
Yeah,
It's like sometimes if I come home from a long round of golf, which I used to stumble in the door
yeah,
after,
yeah,
she takes a long, hard look at me, and
yeah,
I won't deny it's a little frustrating because I like in my
uh-huh,
mind, it's like
yeah,
I am doing so good, you know, but I have
yeah,
to remind myself, hey, I mean, it's only natural for her to have doubt.
yeah,
So I do whatever I have to do in that moment to reassure her and make her
yeah,
understand and believe that I'm still on track, still doing the right things.
yeah,
But I'm far from perfect. I try to, like yesterday was a great day for me and her because we had time to sit around and just
mhm,
talk more than usual. And I'm a lot more, I mean, I shouldn't even say a lot more. I'm actually open with her now, where
yeah,
I never was before.
really
Um,
open. Yeah,
Completely open. She asked me a question. I try to answer it as honestly as I can.
mm,
Um, we go on walks. We went on a walk together yesterday. Like we had all this intimate time together
yeah, but
that I avoided like the plague, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
when I was using.
it also sounds like she's really getting to know the real Dan now, the whole package.
And that was it, man. When I came home after the first, I can't remember exactly, maybe it was
Yeah,
first couple of weeks or something. And she and I were talking, and she said, "I feel like I need to learn now who you really are."
yeah,
'Cause she only knew me as the drinker.
yeah,
So, a lot of things are still the same, but a lot of things are way different.
yeah.
Um, so that takes time, and we'll be in a long, as we've been talking about, it's a long healing
It
process.
is. It
It's going to
is.
take years,
Yes.
you
Yeah, I
know,
know. Yeah.
but I mean, it is so different, so much better,
Yeah, of course.
so much
Yeah.
happier, so much more relaxed, so much more just living
Yeah.
together, you know, and learning about each other. And it's like, I've learned more about her too. Yeah, she's learning who I am, but I actually listen now when whenever she wanted to talk to me before,
Yeah.
I was immediately on guard of what she was going to say
Yeah.
because I thought I was about to like have to defend myself. And then if I didn't have to defend myself, if it was something about her
Yeah.
or her work or something else, then I stopped listening.
Yeah.
It was like once I realized I was off the hook, I wasn't even listening to her
Yeah.
anymore. And now it's not like that.
Yeah.
The communication is just
Yeah.
it's totally different.
Well, I can definitely relate to everything you say, but especially also the last part, it takes years and still I also can relate to like you're saying. If I still I'm now, which is a miracle, 12 years or more than 12 years in recovery, which is just a day by day process. But still, if she says something to me about my behavior, because I'm also still not perfect, then you feel, I'm not doing well, or I'm working so hard, and what's the problem? I'm still in the defense mode and instant, but I've also learned to listen and reflect. And now I say, if she says something, I don't respond, and I say, okay, I hear what you're saying. I'm gonna take it, take it in, and a couple of hours later, I will respond, and then Unfortunately for me, 99% of the time she's always right. So yeah, but this
Are
takes
you are you telling me that after 12 years, and that's awesome, by the way, 12 years, congrats to you.
yeah.
Are you telling me that you still your knee jerk is to still get defensive when she
I can be, especially if I'm stressed and in a hurry, and it's in the beginning of my recovery. I had this idea, which wasn't which was an idea, but not the truth. That if I'm like a year or year and a half in recovery, everything is fixed. I'm 100%, no problems anymore. Geen wolkje aan de lucht, as we say in Dutch. Well, that's not the thing. That's not the case. It doesn't work like this. So um, those 12 years went by. Actually, the beginning was very hard for me because I had 30 years of serious drug addiction. But then gradually things are moving and you're going and the recovery is happening. But the mental process, or the to let go of my own hang-ups and ego and all that stuff, that takes a lifetime. So
yeah.
you're in for the whole ride, then. So
Yeah, it's like because I still surprise myself sometimes when she'll be like, "Hey, can I talk to you about something?"
yeah,
And I
and
immediately go, "Yeah," and
yeah,
I'm like, "Oh crap, what did I do? What did I do?" Like,
yeah, I know
you
what you
know,
mean. Yeah, yeah,
even though
yeah,
I didn't do anything because
yeah,
I'm not doing anything I shouldn't
yeah,
be doing anymore.
yeah, yeah,
But
but
like the natural reaction is to be like, "Oh shit, what did I do?" You
yeah,
know?
yeah, I know what you mean. But the whole thing is really not about the drinking or the using drugs or whatever. It's really about yeah, living from the heart and being open, and in my case, letting go of my own needs and selfishness and ego and all that stuff. And that's really, oh, that's a lot of work. So
Yeah.
because in an addiction was always about me and what I wanted to do, not so
Yeah.
much about her. And I'm still learning this part. So and how are your children? How's your daughter responding to you now?
I mean, I can't. It's hard to even put into words. They The way we connect with each other now,
Yeah,
the way we talk to each other, the way they hang all over me.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and it's just because I was always physically with them before. I
yeah,
still did the things I was supposed to do,
yeah,
right? It's just I wasn't there, right? I was thinking about anything and everything else and
yeah,
myself,
yeah,
right? And from the very beginning, when I came home and I would just be in the room with them or on the field with them or wherever we were,
yeah,
the way they were like attached to me is because they could feel me
yeah,
with them.
yeah,
They knew it.
yeah.
They couldn't put it into words. They still can't put it into words,
But I
but
know.
there's just they feel it. They
Yeah, of
know that
course.
I am
Yeah,
there with them.
yeah.
And
And how does
so
that
now we're
feel?
oh my God. It's like, I mean, for
Yeah,
starters, it feels so great that I know that they know that I'm there for them.
yeah,
It's like they know that.
yeah,
Um, and so that's what I always wanted. It's like,
yeah, of course. Yeah,
but also genuinely enjoying the time, like no matter what it is, even if
mhm,
I'm just sitting in their room with them, forget all the fun stuff we go out and do together. Even if I'm just sitting in the room with
yeah,
them, the conversations we have,
yeah,
the things I learn about them, the curiosity they have, asking me about different things in my life now or when I was a kid and sharing all of that with them.
mhm,
It's like, it's just, that's a gift. It's
yeah,
like, I thought I knew what the gift of being a dad was. I had no idea, you know. Now being sober and being with them and present with them and in it with them,
yeah,
now I know what the gift of being a dad is, and
yeah. Oh,
sharing
that's
and sharing in their development and watching them and understanding how they're growing and
yeah,
changing and learning. And oh, it's God, it's like every day I wake up and I can't wait till they wake up because I want to talk to them about
yeah,
what the day is going to be for them. And it's
yeah. And that's so great to hear. But that's so important. not only for them but also for you, you know. And it's like addiction destroys connection. So whatever addiction, it doesn't matter really, but it all works out the same way. It destroys all the connections between you and yourself, but also, of course, with your loved ones, your children. And yeah, I can relate to that. I have a son who is 18 years. I hadn't seen him for 10 years because of my addiction and difficult other stuff. And now I see him again, and he's proud of me, and I can hug him. And that feeling is, yeah, you can put a price to that. So that's really, yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So then, if we conclude a little bit, um, what you're doing now, because I've seen you have your own podcast. What's the name of your podcast?
The podcast is Dan Karaty, if I'm being honest.
Yeah,
Um, and it's a mix of I have Dutch friends and Dutch colleagues that are on there,
yeah,
but also um, some I know and some I don't know from America. Different athletes, actors,
yeah,
across the spectrum that we talk about addiction, recovery, and really just kind of obstacles you face in life and
yeah.
how you deal with those obstacles,
Hmm.
how you try to overcome them. So I'm doing that. I'm back to work, thank God,
Yeah.
over in the Netherlands, which is awesome. We have the new season of Holland's Got Talent, which is on RTL right now.
Oh, great show.
As you
Yeah,
mentioned in the beginning, Soph
yeah,
is out now, which is
yeah.
awesome. And with RTL, I have some new projects that we'll be doing next year. Um, I'm doing a boxing thing. Rico Verhoeven is
Oh,
holding this live event, so he asked me if I would box in it and have a match. So I'm going to do
now you
that.
better go then to the gym every day because
Oh,
he's
dude, I'm
tough.
doing it, man. I'm sore as hell, but
Yeah,
I'm enjoying it. But I'm just enjoying everything now, right?
yeah,
It's like whether it's these days where when we get off this call,
yeah,
I have a few things I need to do, but I'm really going to be counting the minutes until my kids get out of school.
yeah,
And I'm going to get to spend the time with my family. And I'm just genuinely enjoying these days
yeah,
and getting the most out of them.
yeah.
But also when I am back on Holland's Got Talent
Mm.
or anything that I'm doing, even here, sitting having this conversation with you, man, I'm loving it. Like I'm enjoying it. I'm getting the most out of all these different moments. And how you talked about like it's about addiction. We lose connection
Yeah.
with ourselves, but with everybody around us. And now I feel so connected to everybody around me.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
from my wife and my kids to complete strangers and everybody in between. It's spectacular. No,
Yeah.
so I look forward to my days now of what I get out of them, and every day is enjoyable in some way,
Yeah.
and I love that.
Yeah. Well, I'm so happy for you, and especially the story about your kids and your wife, because, at the end of the day, I think that's always most important, the ones who are closest to you. But I'm happy for you. And how special is this Dutch connection that you're flying back and forth and doing television and all kinds of other stuff? So then yeah,
If I may, really quick,
yeah, of course.
I never took the time to understand how special that Dutch connection was, and is.
Yeah,
Right? I was just like everything else. I was just
doing it. Yeah,
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 pushing forward through my day
yeah,
and not taking any time to to think about what was going on around me. Um, and it's come back into focus since I've been sober, but also being at that day of recovery with you
yeah,
and meeting you and sitting up on that stage with you and talking to the sober community there
yeah,
and really feeling like I was a part of it. Um, that felt so spectacular. And these kind of relationships that I make now,
yeah,
um, it's awesome. I'm
yeah.
so grateful for it.
Yeah, it's definitely adding another dimension of the heart and the openness, which is great.
Yeah.
Then I really want to thank you for your time, and I hope people are watching your show as well. So people go and visit Dan Karaty on Spotify, and you're also on YouTube.
Yeah, on YouTube as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Same thing. Dan Karaty, if I'm being honest.
yeah, okay. So I'm gonna switch back to a little bit of Dutch, and I want to say to everybody who's listening and who is watching this video, thank you for watching. Dat is niet that's English. Dankjewel. Dankjewel voor het kijken en het luisteren naar deze aflevering van Verslaving naar Vrijheid met Dan Karaty is mijn gast, speciaal uit New York. Super bedankt Dan voor je verhaal. En lieve mensen, ik hoop jullie allemaal weer te zien bij de volgende aflevering. Neem dit verhaal mee. Herstel is altijd mogelijk als je je hart opent en ook voor hulp gaat vragen. Lieve mensen, dank jullie wel en tot de volgende aflevering.